Meine sehr verehrten
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot of people in this room, and I think there are some seats still available. Apart from that, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome to the next event, Climate, Customer and Communication. How can sustainable travel services be marketed successfully? This is a question which gained a lot of interest here. So I'm curious to see the voting. As you know, we've always prepared a little question, and I'm going to read the question before you vote with a little box next to you. Please wait a little while. I would like to read out the question first, and then I'll tell you, please vote. You can press the button. The questions are the following ones. Sustainable travel services could sell better. What are the reasons for the low sales volume? A. Prices are too high. B. Lack of customer interest in sustainability. Third answer is insufficient product information. 4. Bad advice from travel agents. And 5 are usually unattractive to customers. So please vote now. So we see a mixed picture here. Insufficient product information, 28.6%. So this is the highest number. So customers want to be sustainable, but there's a lack of information. Next, we've got 2 answers with exactly the same percentage numbers. A lack of customer interest and prices which are too high. This is quite interesting. We need to see whether sustainability is really more expensive. And secondly, we might have customers who are not interested in this. Very exciting. Now we are waiting for Norbert Fiebig, the chairman of the German Travel Association, and he's also the patron of Futouris. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, meine Damen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for the possibility to make a speech here. I would like to talk about the major social challenges in terms of sustainability. And I think in the future, these challenges will be even bigger. We will need to do more. My association, the German Travel Association, DRW, has been active in this for many decades. There was a environmental committee that was then renamed in Sustainability Committee. And we have thus been very active in the field for a long time. As you know, this is about the classical protection of the environment. What all this is about is that we sell nature to customers. We need to protect this nature. And in the future, we must make sure that nature will remain attractive. In the recent past, we focused on this topic in society because the society requires this. This is social responsibility. That is, we make sure that what we do in terms of tourism should not be any activities which harm the countries. We don't want to produce any damages. Cultures should not be damaged by us, of course. And this is also linked to the people who work in tourism. From our point of view, they should be treated fairly and should also be able to make a living in their jobs. Today, we're going to talk about a topic which is linked to what I've just mentioned. And all this is bundled in the products. From my point of view, what we have not managed so far is to establish sustainable products in the market. This is due to several reasons. This is definitely also due to the fact that the sustainable product can't be perceived very clearly today, irrespective of the booking systems. Maybe you cannot find the sustainability at the counter in the booking system. Now the question is, how reliably do I declare products as being sustainable so that people can understand what are sustainable products, what are non-sustainable products? This is one challenge. Then another challenge that has been mentioned here as well. So what about tour operators? Are they able to deal with this? Our association is very active in this field. We Encounter is a project that we launched so as to help the people work in the travel agency. This is a training tool so that they can address these issues more in detail. And the target is to make sure that the people working in the travel agencies become competent partners able to provide sustainable products. Finally, a question can be raised whether customers are willing to buy these things. Well, yes, we do believe so, but not all of them. I think we should cover more people, and I think this is due to the lack of awareness. Generally speaking, I do believe, and this is something that we've seen in the past as well, that we, as the sector, we are the driving force into this direction. I don't really think that customers actively ask for sustainability, and it will not change in the future. Customers won't ask for sustainability. It is rather our task to make people and customers aware of sustainable products, and then also thus to create knowledge. This is the challenge. We need to have the products. We need to make sure that the products can be perceived well, that they are comprehensible, that everybody acknowledges these products as sustainable products, that they are declared as such. And we need to show people working in the travel agencies how to deal with the products, how to convince customers. And last point, and this is supposedly the most difficult task, we must convince customers that as a society as a whole, we should bank more on sustainability and act accordingly. So, very warm welcome. I'm looking forward to the discussion. And well, this is the end of my introductory remarks. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fiebig. I would like to pick up on this. We are going to have a very interesting discussion. First of all, though, Matthias Bayer. I suppose I don't need to introduce him because you know him here at ITB. So, Matthias, over to you. You're going to give us a brief keynote speech before we start with the discussion. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Fiebig mentioned a lot already. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a very warm welcome to you to this panel at the CSR Day. Today, we would like to address the issue how we can sell sustainable journeys. First of all, what do we need to do this? First of all, we need sustainable products, of course. On the other hand, we also need customers who are willing to buy these products. And we need as many customers as possible. Now, let us take a closer look at this. First of all, let's check the supply side. Who is responsible for us to get sustainable products? First of all, it's the players who are directly involved in product development. That is the transport sector, the cruise industry, the hotel sector, catering, but of course, as well, the tour operators, the travel agencies, and last but not least, the destinations as a whole, and thus also the local providers providing services. Now, if we go into the details of these individual segments and we ask about their sustainability, then I suppose we can say, without going into the details, that we can say quite a lot of things have been achieved during the past years. Wherever you look, we can see in the social area, as far as ecology is concerned, we've made progress. Now the question is whether this is sufficient. What about the quality? But I think today we can say it is possible to provide sustainable products to the customers. Nonetheless, we need to ask how we can evaluate whether a service or product is sustainable. What are the criteria? What are the benchmarks that we can use? And I think this is vital also against the backdrop of greenwashing. How do we deal with this so as to show our credibility as a sector? In other sectors, very often they use labels of quality. What about our sector? What do we do? Here again, we do have the possibility to use labels, of course, no doubt about it. But as you can see, we have managed to enhance the tourism landscape, and I don't mean this in a positive term. We've got a lot of hallmarks, a lot of quality labels. Now you might wonder which ones are the right ones. Also, from the point of view of the customers, it is difficult to choose here. What is helpful here is that we've got minimum standards now provided by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. We have a procedure which helps us so that we can make sure that the quality labels have to meet minimum standards. Nonetheless, we faced a situation that only a fraction of all the companies are and have been certified at all. So what about the rest? Because there are a lot of companies which are committed in the field of sustainability. Second point, how do we deal with package tours? Can we say in a roundabout way they're all sustainable anyhow? And I think this is an issue we should discuss on the panel later on. Now, let us talk about sustainability, about the demand side. We carried out a survey in the city of Lüneburg, and we would like to watch a video and listen to a video about what people in Lüneburg think about the topic of sustainable travel.
Kriegen wir den Ton ein bisschen lauter?
Weil das sehr viel Emissionen produziert.
Ich weiß jetzt, ob es noch nicht was passiert eigentlich in den Ländern, wenn man bereist?
Dass man zu Fuß noch nicht geht. Der Umgebung geht vor Ort und als sich ja nicht pflegt, was ich nicht mache.
Nachhaltige Reise. Naja, dass man da immer wieder dran zurückdenkt, was so alles passiert ist, wann das gegangen ist.
Nicht so weit zu reisen, Flugreisen zu vermeiden und auch im Urlaub auf umweltschädliche Dinge zu verzichten.
Haben Sie selber schon bei Ihren Reisen auf Nachhaltigkeit geachtet?
Instinktiv, also nicht als Vorsatz, dass es nachhaltig ist.
Nicht so wirklich. Ich mache halt zum Beispiel gerne Flugreisen.
Wir fahren zunehmend Fahrrad. Wir kaufen regionale Produkte. Wir versuchen möglichst viel mit den Menschen dort in Kontakt zu kommen und uns zu erkundigen. Achten natürlich darauf, dass wir die Umwelt nicht zerstören.
Nur, inwiefern? Insofern, dass ich noch nie geflogen bin, verdammt. Und dafür schäme ich mich auch nicht, dass ich das jetzt sogar in die Kamera sage.
Glauben Sie, dass im Reisebüro gut über nachhaltige Reisen informiert werden?
Relativ. Die meisten Reisebüros sind verfolgt.
Ich glaube nicht. Ich glaube, da gibt es auch Fernreisen, die Reisen nicht viel Geld bringen.
Ich organisiere meine Reisen selbst.
Ich könnte mir vorstellen, wenn man danach fragt, dass das Personal durchaus interessiert ist und auch was dazu sagen kann, aber dass sie von sich aus alles nein.
Ich denke schon. Also ich erwarte das einfach auch.
Ich glaube, da muss man gezielt nachfragen, wenn man das möchte. Ne?
Glauben Sie, dass nachhaltige Reisen teurer sind?
Nicht zwingend, nee. Ja, grundsätzlich sind sie. Würde ich noch nicht mal sagen.
Das kann gut durchaus sein, weil ja eigentlich solche Sachen häufig teurer sind, aber ich denke, es ist auch gerechtfertigt.
Würden Sie ein nachhaltiges Hotel buchen, wenn Sie 2 Hotels zur Auswahl hätten, die vom Preis und der Leistung ansonsten völlig gleich wären?
Ja.
Würde ich machen wahrscheinlich, ja. Ja.
Vielleicht, ja.
Ja, doch. Einfach von der Sympathie her.
Ja, selbstverständlich.
Nein, das sind beide gleich. Klar.
Ja, natürlich.
Würde ich das tun, ja. Ja.
Also ich bin positiv überrascht und wirklich begeistert, dass sich schon fast alle mit der Thematik auseinandergesetzt hatten und dass sogar die meisten bei ihren eigenen Reisen bereits auf Nachhaltigkeit achten. Viele haben bereits gesagt, dass sie in Zukunft auf Flugreisen verzichten werden oder langsamere Verkehrsmittel bevorzugen. Das war sehr positiv. Die Reisebüros werden das, glaube ich, ziemlich schwierig haben, in Zukunft genau diese Kunden zu erreichen. Nur sehr wenige hatten bisher in der Vergangenheit im Reisebüro gebucht oder denken, dass sie dort gut beraten wären.
Ja, meine Damen und Herren, es tut mir
Ladies and gentlemen, apologies because the sound was not too good, but this was just to give you an impression about what people in Lüneburg think. Maybe this is not representative, but in any case, it gives you an insight into their ideas. The student just mentioned something, and I would like to pick up on this. What we've seen and heard is something that you can also show by several other figures. The latest figures we've got in our project, and I'm going to introduce the project later on, show, for instance, that 17.5% of people being interviewed think that they make sure that they book a sustainable trip. 53.7% agree with the statement, I'd like to make my holidays more sustainable. But if you ask them, what about your specific holiday plans, what do you do when you plan holidays, then it's only 6.7% of people who answer in the affirmative and say, yes, I make sure that the tour is sustainable. And 26.2% say, well, yes, it was one factor amongst many others. Though, what does that mean? This means that with regard to sustainability, people are indeed aware of it, but as far as buying or purchasing behavior is concerned, there's still a major gap between awareness and buying behavior. Now, if you ask people how can we sell sustainable travels, then it is important to bridge that gap and to make this jump from awareness towards a sustainable buying behavior, so as to make sure that customers actually also book sustainable trips. But this is not sufficient, of course. We must not only take into account customers, we need to take into account the entire supply chain and the sector as such. I carried out a mystery check in 24 travel agencies in the city of Bremen in December. And in pairs of 2, they went to travel agencies so as to book a long-haul trip to a destination of their choice. And I would like to briefly introduce the main findings of this mystery check. First of all, you need to see that all travel agencies involved said that so far no customers ever inquired about a sustainable trip. So you can imagine the reactions when the students expressed this wish. It's not that the people in the travel agencies did not know what sustainability is. They've got a certain understanding, but they are kind of helpless when it comes to providing services accordingly. They really made an effort, but usually students booked the trips that were sold usually by these travel operators. So as far as awareness and knowledge is concerned, there are still quite a lot of things that need to be improved. And for instance, the students asked whether there was a compensation scheme for flights, and the answer was no, this is not possible yet. If you want to travel sustainably, then it was said you can only do this in Germany. And in one case, there was one offer for 12 days in Thailand to the tune of 8,000 euros per person, by the way. So in this case, sustainability meant luxury travel, expensive traveling, apparently. So these are quite a few problems still to be solved if we want to sell more sustainable travels. Another aspect I would like to shed light on. Just recently, we had the Grüne Woche trade show here in Berlin, and a survey was carried out. People were asked about organic foodstuff and what they think about it. And there was one person who said, to be quite honest, I've never bought anything organic. And if I did, it was merely by accident. I think this is quite an interesting statement because this results in the question, if people manage to have a healthy diet by accident, it might also be possible to make sure that people go on a sustainable trip by accident, or to go one step further, maybe this is the right approach so as to achieve our goals. Why do I say this? Well, we assume that the demand for sustainable travel services will increase, but I think we can also assume that sustainability will only be a neglectable factor for many people in the future when it comes to booking their trips. So how can we sell sustainable trips? It's not only about the aspect of sustainability. I think we need to have a more holistic thinking against this backdrop so as to make sure that the society at large gets interested in these trips. That means we need to be geared towards customer requirements and need to focus on the need for consultation, that is destination, arrival, departure. What about overnight stays, accommodation, if there's a lack of accommodation, and what about activities and mobility in the destinations? I think these are the fields where we can become more active in terms of sustainability and making sure that customers' requirements are met. So we need to address the wishes of customers. We need to talk to the people and find out what they want, where do they need additional advice, where are they flexible. And then we need to have quick access to alternatives and sustainable services. And if we want to get this message across in our talks with the customers, then I think it is about sustainability on the one hand, but not with regard to all the customers. Product quality, experiential value, and maybe the price are three other factors that we need to use so as to sell sustainable products. Because, as I've said, sustainable products are not necessarily more expensive than conventional products. Now, from an entrepreneurial perspective, you can say, okay, I shall get involved in sustainability. Fine, fair enough. But on the other hand, I see that there's not really any demand. How do you deal with this? And Mr. Fiebig already slightly touched on it. When talking about sustainability, it's not about the two categories of supply and demand. I think it is rather about us making sure that every company has a responsibility in society to get involved in sustainable development. And I think what it is also about is to point out that companies can benefit from this. Supposedly, there will not be an industry which really relies on a pristine nature, just like the tourism industry. And this is a message that the tourism industry needs to understand. So we don't think that sustainable products are a niche product or think that this is a complementary product compared to conventional products in inverted commas. I think the spirit you need to sustain so as to sell sustainable products is that we need to make more steps into the same direction. So gradually, the entire sector needs to become more sustainable, because the larger the market share of sustainable travel products and services, the fewer alternative customers will have, and the fewer resources will be needed to market and communicate sustainable travel services. Now, if we delve into the details here, and this is a summary for our discussion as well, where do we need to start? Well, where customers book their trips, that is in the travel agencies, in the with their tour operators or directly with the service providers, such as hotels, for instance, and online is another important area, of course. Now, let us take a look at the development of the last years. We can see that there is a high increase in online bookings. Now, to draw the conclusion from this that we should only focus on online platforms is wrong, I think. Or in any case, it would be too early, because if you take a closer look at it, then you can see that personal conversational talks in the travel agencies is what is most important to customers. This is where they book. So travel agencies are still of paramount importance when it comes to provide advice to travelers and also make them book their holidays. This is especially true for package tours. You can see this here on the charts. This is quite interesting. Although there has been a high increase in online bookings, we can see that travel agencies are still very important for package tours. In any case, this is the case in Germany. There is hardly any change. There has hardly been any change during the past 10 years. So travel agencies are still very important when it comes to selling sustainable trips. So what should we focus on? On both online bookings on the one hand, and on the other hand, travel agencies as well. And the three major challenges that I can see ahead of us, and also which are important for our discussion, are the following ones. We do need technical solutions. People working in travel agencies must be able to quickly find and identify sustainable travel services, and customers must also be able to quickly identify such sustainable offers. We need communication solutions. We need to wonder how we can communicate sustainability. How can we make sure in a proactive manner that sustainable travel services are sold better? And this moves us on to the third point, which are qualification solutions. We need various training programs for travel agents and others to gain an insight into sustainability. We need to raise their awareness, because if they're not aware of sustainable travels, they can't sell sustainable holidays, of course. And we also, again, need to communicate this to customers. I think these are the three core issues we should discuss. And now I am pleased to discuss this together with the panelists. I would like to ask you on stage, and I would like to thank you for your attention. And I think we are going to get more information about very interesting approaches. Thank you.
Ja. Aber bitte. Mal außen. Haben wir noch ein Mikro für unsere...
Have we got enough mics up here? Great. Okay. Then, first of all, welcome to all of you. I'm delighted that we have such a high quality and quantity panel. Let me start on the far right with Brian Young, who is Managing Director EMEA with G Adventures. Welcome to you. Also welcome to Mr. Fiebig. We've already heard he's President of the German Travel Association and a patron of Futouris. Next to Mr. Fiebig, we have Dr. Oliver Rengelshausen, who is General Manager with Traveltainment and Deputy Chair of the Online Travel. Then we have Edgar Keilkamp from Leuphana-Universität Lüneburg. Next to him, I'd also like to welcome Dr. Dietrich Brockhagen, Managing Director of Atmosphere. And last but not least, Hasse von Düring, Managing Director of Lufthansa City Center Reisebüro Partner. He's the chairman of Futouris at present. So in my last slide, I mentioned how we need solutions, and I know that all of you have been working on that in practice. I just want to give you a brief opportunity to talk about that practice a little bit, what approaches you've seen, and perhaps we can pick up what Mr. Fiebig said about ring counter. And what is the Travel Association doing about this? Perhaps you could begin. I thought I'd said so much already. No, the Green Counter is an initiative that the DRV, the German Travel Association, began over a year ago now, and the aim is to enable travel agency employees to train up their skills with regard to sustainability and sustainable travel. It's an online-based product. You can do this at home on your own computer, and this enables you to absorb additional know-how. The aim being because people have very different individual needs, that is, the clients, try to understand what those are and give appropriate answers, and where appropriate, offer appropriate products to that customer. So that's what the initiative is about. And almost 500 people have already been through this training. If you work in travel agencies, I'm very happy to invite you to come and have a look at it. I'm sure it will help to develop skills in this sphere. But something that's important is that if the travel agent is to be appropriately trained, they also need to find the products when they want them, and there have to be various sort criteria for that. That results from the specific needs of the customer. I think we've got quite a long way to go there, but I'm sure we will be talking about that in detail to find out what needs to happen next. Thank you, Mr. Fiebig. So we've heard that in Green Counter we have this online tool which travel agents can use in the interests of sustainability. There's a second approach to skilling, and Mr. Brockhagen, I think, has been involved in this. What is behind that program? Well, Atmosphere works with partners, Mask on Tour, for example, and we've set up a broad training program for travel agencies. There are 3 phases to it. First of all, a training course which you have to attend in person from morning till evening, focus on sustainability. We've done this in Berlin. The idea is to go through all the details of the sales process, to train people about various products. How do I recognize what's sustainable in a travel product? And there are various tools which enable me to advise my customer better during our conversation. Then you can go home, travel agent can go home and go into more depth on certain aspects, and you have to answer test questions. Then in the third stage, a trainer comes into the travel agency and watches people doing their work and gives feedback on that. So that is very practice-oriented. Our experience with this is that the first cohort of travel agents that we had in Berlin went home feeling very energized. We sometimes felt that we somehow woke them to all the potential of their lives that they hadn't discovered before. Anyway, it's almost as if they hadn't realized what they could do about sustainability at work before, and they were very happy to be able to find out more about this. They were incredibly highly motivated and mutually supportive, and we were quite surprised to experience all this. But the dark side to that was that we saw that although we knew that sustainability is a multi-layered matter, and we tried to break it down into simple instruments and always make it practically relevant, we found that again and again there was a gap, and that even product knowledge is not sufficient with travel agents. And then the travel agents get very insecure. And they're not quite sure that they've quite understood whether it's what the customer needs. They worry that they might be losing an opportunity. So we drew up a business case. We interviewed about 50 travel agencies really in detail and talked to them at length, and found out that 5 to 10% of customers are rated by the travel agency employees as appropriate targets, and they would like sustainable travel, and there's an interest there in keeping them in the travel agency by finding the right products and offering them the right products. But they need support on the IT side. And there, of course, I'm going to look at traveltainment that enables them to deal with that complexity and give power into the hands of the travel agent. Okay, traveltainment we've just heard. Dr. Rengelshausen, you work on technical solutions for tour operators, travel agencies, online portals. We've heard about two examples. We've just heard about the travel agencies. What about online portals? Are initial approaches there for making it simpler for consumers to find sustainable offerings? Well, this is information that you have to attach to your product. The question is how you find it online. And one thing is what's on the website. I'm not aware amongst our clients of sustainability playing a role in online sales. There may be some portals that have specialized in that, but in general, and I think that's quite well known, the online portals are basically working on conversion. How many visits will actually buy a product? And if that's something that they can get the visitor to buy, then I'm sure that they will take the measures they need to make sure that happens. The important thing is that the information has to be made available. But from what I've heard so far, the message I'm getting is that we have quite a long way to go in order to cluster the information appropriately and make it available intelligibly. Because the problem that people is that very often people don't know what it is they're looking at. And above all, of course, the consumer needs to understand that. Okay, we'll talk about the consumer a bit more later, but first of all, let's carry on. Green travel transformation. I've just mentioned this as another initiative. Mr. Keilkamp is involved in that with various partners. What are you trying to transform? Our aim is to make sustainability mainstream in tourism, not to see sustainability as a little niche segment for specialists, but as something for the overall market. And against that backdrop, 4 or 5 years ago, we carried out some studies and we interviewed travel agencies to find out why they're not selling sustainable travel. And of course, the point was, on the one hand, that they knew too little about sustainability themselves. But the central aspect they raised again and again was that if I'm a travel agent and I want to offer sustainability, I can't find the products because they're not properly labeled, they're not accessible online. So from that point of view, I don't stand a chance. I can't offer the right advice. There was a third point that they raised as well, which is that even if people know what sustainability means, a lot of travel agency staff didn't fully realize how they could conduct a conversation about the subject. That is, how they talk about it, what arguments they use with the customer. In a lot of travel agencies, the view was, I need to persuade people that if they are not traveling sustainably, they're harming the environment. It's bad enough that they're flying. I need to tell them it's a very bad thing to go on holiday. So I just don't touch it. I don't go there. So we developed a project which, fortunately, the Education and Research Ministry here in Germany has decided to fund for 3 years. We've been doing it for 2 years, working with a number of research partners. Fraunhofer Institute is involved, Travel Bridge is involved, and Futouris very much, through various practice partners, LTC, Thomas Cook, Der Touristik, Studiosas, Gibico, and so forth. And we're trying to implement this. And we've seen in the last 2 and 3 years, we've seen again and again that the biggest problem is making these sustainable offerings visible, labeling them somehow, not just on a website somewhere, but in the systems that the travel agencies are using, so that travel agency staff have to see it. They're confronted with it. They can't avoid seeing it. That's our approach. So we said, now, I think TSCC has seen there are 450 different seals or quality labels available. And we've said we'd use them, and only if GSTC has accredited them. We're working together with the certifiers. They give us their lists of the hotels that are certified. They all get put in our database. And then it gets complicated because then we go to Yata, Traveltainment, we go to the other travel agency systems. For the ITB, we've been having a lot of conversations about this. And we've got to the point now where we say it will happen, it will all work. We still have a few technical hitches to resolve. But the offerings will then be visible. We have solutions for the hotels. We're going to work on solutions, and we're talking about those now, for air travel, and we can expand it. And then we will set about training travel agency staff, because we'll say, look, you can find these things now in the system, it's visible. So we will start training, not on sustainability as such, because all kinds of people are providing that kind of training. We want to develop training on the subject, how do I talk to my customer about sustainability? How do I address the issue? How do I persuade people? Because we take the view that traveling more sustainably is traveling better. It's not more expensive. Why should a hotel be more expensive when it's saving on electricity and water and other resources? A lot of people think it's more expensive. It isn't, it's just better. So we said we'll carry out 2,000 interviews with customers to find out what are actually the factors that customers would respond to, because they need to have a perception of it somehow. And what rather surprised us was that social factors are quite high up the list. How can I help the country? What are the working conditions of the people working in tourism there? Cultural issues. And if we can incorporate that into the conversation somehow, so not just a few travel agencies, but all of them are able to deal with the subject. Okay, Mr. von Düring, you've been working on an initiative called Green Search. Can you explain what is being searched and whether you found it? Well, let me just step back a bit. On the one hand, I am chair of Futouris, and as Futouris, we're delighted that this project that Mr. Kalkamp has been describing is there, so that everyone in the value chain is involved. The tour operators, the technology, the hotels, the destinations, so that they can all be properly earthed. Because in the charts up here, you showed that wonderful cliff. And I say, we're talking about a gap here. I think Mr. Ringershausen talked about a gap. It's not just, it's an abyss between what's offered, the supply side, which is pretty diffuse because of all the very many different environment labels. We also have a problem on the demand side. So it's not surprising that you get figures like that when nobody is in a position to explain in 3 sentences what sustainability is, and where I can find products which I can, with all good conscience, offer. Because, as you know, sustainability is risk business. So, very important project that we're doing in Futouris with our partners. And then my second hat is as Lufthansa City Centre. Delighted that I haven't had to talk about that yet, but part of that project is how do I explain in those famous 3 sentences to my customers what this product, which I've just found, offers that is sustainable. Because it is quite stressful. Everyone gets this question. Someone comes into a travel agency and says, I want to go on holiday, and you have to be pretty certain about the answers they give that customer. So you need very excellent communication skills. We have to work on that. But also you need technical skills. Perhaps we'll come back to that in a moment. This transformation that you have an idea and then you make that sellable, that's what we've not been very good at. And we will never get this up and running if we don't really make supply and demand function together on a commercial basis, because if we don't sort out the demand, the supply side won't get sorted out. Just having goodwill and good spirit will not be enough. Thank you. Brian Young. You started an initiative, Responsible Travel Ambassador. Can you tell us what is behind that?
Being the only British-speaking, non-German-speaking person in the building, sorry, would you like to translate that into English for us? The question, sorry, in English, if possible?
Of course, yeah.
Sorry.
You don't have any translation, or?
No, there's two things, it's too much.
It's okay.
Sorry.
Well, the question was, you initiated an initiative called Responsible Travel Ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit what is behind this ambassador story?
Sure, yeah. So those of you that don't know much about our organisation, G Adventures, so we're a small group tour company. We have tours all over the world, and part of what we do, other than doing great tours, there are some social enterprise projects that we've created around the world. So we have a non-profit organisation which is called Planetera, that was set up by the founder of our organisation a few years ago. And basically Planetera creates sustainable projects around the world. We set those projects in play in local communities, and the purpose of those projects are to ensure that we create wealth creation, that we keep as much money as possible in the local communities, and that we also create job creation. And part of that then is that we release those projects into the local communities, and they're run by the locals. And all we then do is, through the power of our passengers that are on a tour, we take those tours through some of those projects around the world, and therefore self-sustaining those projects over a period of time. So that's in the DNA of our organisation, and the reason why we created a responsible tourism ambassador in the German marketplace is that we wanted to actually broaden out the message to travel agents. Now, I have a great sales team and a great number of people that work for us. In fact, they're all stood over there in the back corner of the room, that go out and they purvey that message to our travel agent partners in terms of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So we have purpose behind the holidays that we sell, which are around supporting local communities. So we went out this year and said that we wanted to create a responsible tourism ambassador that was a travel agent, so that the travel agent community didn't just hear the message from our sales team, but they also heard the message from a fellow travel agent. So we had a little competition in play that the travel agents had to write a prose that explained why they wanted to be the responsible tourism ambassador and what sustainable travel meant to them as an individual. We then put all of those entries together. We had a judging panel that actually brought all of those entries down to, I think we had 8 people. We flew those people into the UK of our office, and we also had one of the trade press with us at the same time. And then all of those individuals had to present back to the panel of judges why they should be and what sustainable travel meant to them as a travel agent, and how would they promote sustainable travel to their consumers and to other travel agents in the German marketplace. And then the judging panel deliberated, and we created a responsible tourism ambassador. And that person has already been out to Peru, has been on one of our tours, and has also had the opportunity to see in action 3 of our sustainable projects that we've got in Peru. And the whole objective behind that is in that they come back into the marketplace, admittedly that they do an interview to talk about their experience and what those social sustainable projects meant to them as an individual, and how we do that as a company, and the impact that that has on the locals, the community, and as well as the people that travel with us as G Adventures. So, and then their role is over the next 12 months is that we will utilise the ambassadors to go out and talk at trade shows. When we do partner evenings with travel agents, we want them to tell them about their experience. It's great that we've got an amazing team over there that go out and promote that product, but sometimes I also think travel agents like to hear it from their peer group. So that's the whole perspective of why we put a responsible tourism ambassador in play.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. I hope the translation works now for you. If not, just let me know. Huh?
Sure.
Ja, gehen wir mal jetzt einen Schritt weiter.
Then let's go a step further. We've talked about a few aspects of this. Something that would interest me, Mr. Fiebig, is what needs to happen to make it possible for travel agents to sell sustainable travel. What are the points we need to work on to make progress in this field? Well, the products need to be recognizably sustainable, and they have to be sortable by different criteria, so that if you're going to reach into that box as a travel agent, it needs to be a big box, and there needs to be plenty of material in it, but it has to be recognizable. So the first step before you can conduct a conversation with a customer about sustainable travel is probably not very difficult. The complicated bit is what we heard before. If I look at this labyrinth of sustainable labels that we have at the moment, this jungle, for customers, we really have to persuade them that this is a sustainable label. Yes, and so is this one, and so is this one. But we need a bit more structure to it. It's all a bit confusing at the moment. We need some kind of a standardization of this labeling so that if we stick with the jungle, it's going to be hard to advise our consumers. So the next thing is the products need to be available, they need to be sortable, and they need to be quite easy to classify for the travel agent so that the travel agent can see whether this reflects the needs of the person in front of him or her. Though I also firmly believe that as far as sustainable products are concerned, I think there's a bit of a bottleneck here. We are moving around in a niche at the moment, and at least in people's heads, perhaps we're working with a clientele that buys organic food and wears sandals, but that's no longer the case. There's much more interest in sustainability out there, and the products need to reflect that. And it's quite right what somebody said before. We will only get up to speed on the supply side if the commercial figures make sense. And von Düring just said it. We need to accelerate in the implementation. We need more offers, and it's not enough just to have the goodwill. No, it needs to be meaningful. It needs to make commercial sense. The products need to be able to earn money. And I'm sure a lot of work still needs doing on that. The suppliers, the providers themselves need to work on this, because if I behave in a sustainable way, then I will benefit from that in terms of cost structure. And I think that message needs to be made quite clear in hotels in particular, also in air travel. If you look at modern technology, the modern engines, they've understood what they need to do. The emissions from modern aeroplanes are much lower. So is the fuel consumption. And the advantage of that is that I also save on costs. And that will drive the business forward. So it's not just being a good person, it's having a business case. And if we have that, we will have triple advantages. And we shouldn't have any illusions. We're not going to achieve this overnight. We can all contribute to it. And I think all of us are drivers in our own way. But it's not the consumer that's going to drive us. We're going to have to drive the consumer. Did you want to come back on that one, Mr.? Yes, I can only confirm that. I talked about this big box that you would reach into. And just imagine, Mr. Brockhagen has trained his 500 travel agent employees. They come back to their travel agency. Same thing online, I suppose. But they come back and they can't find anything in the box that they want to offer. And that's our problem. So this travel agent employee who spends 2 days attending your course and then working on the online module is going to be very disappointed. And we've contributed to that because on the supply side and on the demand side, we have not supplied the technical solutions to sort the offerings and to engage with them in our conversations with consumers. We need a lean process if it's going to make commercial sense. And a lean process means I need to be able to click and find out what I want to sell. And I have to be able to explain it to the customer too, because with so many products, and that's not only the case with sustainable products, I'm not really sure what the key points are that would interest this particular customer I have in front of me. And for that I need excellent technology, which we don't have yet and which we can't have yet and probably will develop far too late. We have price comparison models, but we don't have quality and sustainability comparison models, and we have to work on that. Thank you. I'd like to come back to this aspect of online sales. Mr. Brockhagen, do we need new search functions for these sustainable offerings, and what needs to happen? Those big numbers that are booking hotels and flights so that they can recognize very quickly what is sustainable. From your point of view, what can be improved there? Today, we're in a position to use the data, even with traveltainment, at least as far as the environment's concerned. That's one of the 3 factors in sustainability, to make some pretty clear statements. So, for example, how far are we traveling? Who are we flying with? What hotel category is it? What the destination is? All those things. I can give you the carbon footprint for that journey, maybe not with 100% precision, but at least over 90% precision, both in absolute terms and with a best-in-class comparison. So we can do that. We can offer a customer alternatives, and that's what we're talking about if we're going to manage consumer behavior and give consumers choice. So if we leave climate aside, it gets harder. If you look at economic sustainability and the question in terms of destination, how much money is going to stay in Morocco after my holiday? What about the supplier chain? What about the farmers in the chain? What about the people who do the washing for the hotel? Then very quickly we run out of information. None of the quality labels will tell you that. And if you then come back to the cultural or social sustainability, this question which customers might ask about, okay, if I look in the catalogue and there's a trip there, safari in Botswana, and looking for the last specimens of a dying species, perhaps, then traveltainment certainly won't have any information about that. I'd have to Google and do some research myself. But I can see very clearly here that there is a need. Firstly, we need product labels. We have too much on the supply side for a tour operator or something. We have labels, but we don't have them for individual products. And I'm absolutely sure that if we had a robust set of 10 or 12 criteria, doing a little bit of the kind of research I talked about, or based on data that's been collected, if we could apply those criteria to products, quite beyond the labels we've got now, it's not rocket science, it must be possible. With 12 questions that have objective answers to come up with some kind of a score. And I've talked about this at GSTC, and I think this is the basis. I think that will make that box that Mr. Fiebig was talking about much clearer, and I'm grateful to him for mentioning that, because as a travel industry, we owe something to our clients. We can't say, as long as customers don't ask us, we don't need to tell them this. That won't get us anywhere. We need to offer this information, and then people will start to ask about it. Brian?
Okay. Very interesting, some of the points that were made there. So, as our organisation has evolved in terms of some of those projects that we do that are around sustainable travel, one of the other aspects, we're the first travel company that actually has assessed its supplier chain based on our core values. We call it G-Local, but basically it's a study of real-world impact of our travellers on the communities that we visit. So in all of our brochures, we have this, which is, it signifies the impact that we make. So we basically have gone out to the supply chain. So 97% of our tour suppliers employ sustainable practices in their operations. And then the report from that assessment breaks that down. And as another example of that, 112,000 people are employed globally by G Adventures through our contracted services providers. So clearly here, listen, if you grab one of our brochures at some point, you can see it, but that's how we're defining and actually understanding very clearly, one, the impact that we make on the ground from a sustainable point of view. They're very clear what impact we're making, and actually we're putting that front and centre of our brochures so that the customers can see very clearly that when they're making a choice of the type of holiday that they want to go on, that actually they might not understand sustainable travel, but what they do know is that they want to make a positive impact on the local community. And therefore, by us creating something like G Local, even though they might not understand it entirely, they can see very clearly that if I book one of those holidays with this organisation, I can very clearly see some of the impact that me going on holiday is having. So our philosophy is we actually want people to go away on holiday and have a really good time, but at the same time understand the impact that they're having on the local community and sustainable travel. So I think we're at the forefront of some of those things, and don't get me wrong, it's taken us time, but that's the difference, I think, between an organisation like G Adventures, where it's inbuilt in our DNA. It's a part of what we do. Our whole culture and the purpose of what we do rolls into one of our core values, which is about we love changing people's lives. That whole philosophy is about changing people's lives in community to benefit communities, and therefore the more that we sell onto our tours, the more impact we can have from the consumer understanding of sustainable tourism, the impact of the people on communities on the ground, and likewise the travel agents or the consumers that purchase one of our holidays. They're part of that chain that actually all the way through that chain to the very end at local community helps to impact and change lives in those local and create a sustainable travel product. So we're there. We've still got more work to do on it, but I think we're at the forefront of that as a company, and G Local is, I think, a way that other companies should be looking at. How do we actually get that? I know technology and aggregation of the technology and all of those moving parts is difficult in some respect, but I do think companies have to take a step back and actually look at what they do and then work out a strategy of what does it actually mean to the consumer and what does it mean to the local communities that we're impacting, and then create a strategy or a vision around that. And I think it can be done because we've proved it as a company.
Danke, Brian. Ja. Herr Kagam, Sie wollten auch noch was sagen?
Thank you very much. Just briefly now, because we're running out of time, you wanted to come back on that one. Yes, one or two aspects that have been mentioned. We have to recognize that holidaymakers might want to become sustainability experts. So we asked what labels they knew, and the visibility is between 0 and 2%. But what customers want to know is it sustainable or isn't it sustainable? That information is enough in 90% of cases. And then you might get a follow-up question about the difference between two hotels. But we have to do the rest of the work. We have to do it, and the certifiers have to do it. And the second point, if we manage in the travel agencies and in the tour operator systems to get in there, then we will automatically be reflected in the online systems. I think the development is perhaps more likely to be that the online systems will be quicker than the travel agencies, actually. Okay, last point. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but there is one brief question I'd like to go into. We have no time. Oh, then they will have to do without that question. Okay, nevertheless, I think that we have heard a lot of interesting insights there as to how we can approach selling sustainable travel. We've heard that there are lots of different approaches out there. Green travel transformation, green counter, green search, all very green. But of course, that raises the question, is it greenwashing as well? No, this is something we won't have time to go into, but I think we can be optimistic as to the foreseeable future, because both travel agencies and consumers, I think, booking online, will be encountering those responses in the future. So thank you to the panelists, and of course, They're all gentlemen up here. I'm very sorry about that. I hope that next time maybe we'll find a female participant. But